Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our Western Washington weather and California weather live update this evening. We've got a lot of stuff to talk about, especially down in California, but we've also got some stuff to talk about here in Western Washington. So I'm just going to, we're just going to look at this satellite loop for a little bit while we let some more folks get in here. Be sure to like and subscribe to Western Washington weather if you are not already. All right, everyone. Well, it is 7 o'clock, so I'm just going to start going through some weather forecast information right now. So we can take a look here at the satellite imagery. You can see high clouds across parts of western Washington there. We had some of that veiled sunshine all day today. And you can see those clouds are going to be moving through, and we should have another sunny day tomorrow. Let's take a look at our current temperatures. I'm sure you have noticed it has been quite a cold past few days. So let's take a look at air temperature here, and you can see as the sun has gone down, we're already starting to drop temperatures pretty quickly here. You can see some of those outlying areas already below freezing. Take a look at Shelton, down to 28 already, Olympia at 30, 27 there on base at Joint Base Lewis McChord. You can see temperatures in the low 30s across some of the outlying parts of the Puget Sound lowlands, and then in the mid to upper 30s there over the Seattle metro area. As we go to the north, we can see that we have some temperatures dropping into the 30s already, low 30s there around Bellingham. And then you can see as you go into the mountains some pretty chilly temperatures as well. One thing, I talked about this in my video this morning, but the Methow Valley there around Winthrop and Twisp, some of the coldest temperatures in the state of Washington, got below zero earlier today, actually, so that is quite interesting. Let me take a look on the chat here. Anna says, thank you for doing this live. Of course, great. Roland also says thank you. Roland says, Weather Channel calling for snow at my home in Maple Falls on February 1st. Yeah, that's pretty far out in the extended forecast, so we've got a while to look at those possibilities. But speaking of that extended forecast, let's take a look at that. So you can see here, this is a European model, and we can go to the extended run here, and I'm just going to play this through, and you can see that we don't really have any precipitation that reaches western Washington until right there about Thursday evening. You can see some light showers possibly moving through the area, and then we stay dry again from Thursday evening all the way through next Thursday before maybe we start to get some systems in here. Next Thursday is January 30th into Friday, maybe mountain snow, some of that going on there, but that's so far out in the extended forecast that it's not even really worth mentioning at this point. But it is worth noting that we may get some precipitation moving into the area by the time we get to next week. Oh, sorry, not next week. Next week is still going to be mostly dry, the end of next week. So it's going to be quite a long time without precipitation. And we can also see that if we look at rain totals here. You can see by the time we get all the way to the start of February, not even an inch for some of the metro area. You can see a lot of that is focused on British Columbia there, but even the Washington coast, some areas that are typically quite wet at this time of year, are only getting around an inch of rain. So that is just showing how dry it is. Craftwork says you're down in Cougar. Nice, that's down there, south central Washington there. Gonna be pretty cold over the next few days down in some of those valleys. Let's take a look at our low temperatures here. This is the national blend of models. And as you can see, some of these areas in southwest Washington, they're in the mid-20s. And you can see there, we just have that continuing over the next few days. As we go to, so that's Friday, we start to warm up a little bit. But Saturday and then Sunday, back down into the low to mid-20s again. So it's just going to be kind of this continued thing of like these frosty mornings and some clearer afternoons, but it's still going to be quite cold. I'd expect lows, especially in outlying areas, to be below freezing for the next week or so. A asks opinions on Friday, any potential. We're looking at precipitation there. We can actually zoom in here. Let's take a look at, let's find Seattle here, and we can take a look at the potential for any type of frozen precipitation. Let's go back here to Thursday, and you can see you have this area of precipitation moving south, but it really looks like barely anything across the area here on Friday. That would be on the European model. Let's take a look at the latest one there. You can see just not very much in the way of any type of precipitation there Thursday into Friday. And we can look at this in a different way here. Let's look at the total precipitation, and you can see very, very little. That was rain. Let's take a look at snow. Same thing holds true. I mean, when you're talking about 0.2 inches at Snoqualmie Pass, this is going to be a pretty, this just shows you how dry we are, that it's the middle of January, toward the end of January now, and our extended snow forecast shows a ½ inch of snow. So it's just kind of an interesting situation we've got going on there, where just really not very much is going on. However, things are going on across some other parts of the country. So I did say in the title of this live stream says Western Washington and California weather updates. So let's take a look at California. So this is a graphic from the National Weather Service Storm Prediction Center, and you can see we've got extreme fire weather again. So this, we've got Monday's outlook here on the top, Tuesday's outlook on the bottom there. So what are we talking about here? The overview: of moderate to strong Santa Ana wind event is expected to begin today and persist into Tuesday. Potentially damaging gusts of 60 to 100 miles an hour within the terrain and 50 to 70 miles per hour elsewhere is expected. Relative humidity will be lower than the previous event, with widespread relative humidity in the single digits, which is very extreme and quite dangerous. So timing: offshore winds should gradually increase through today, that's Monday. Winds in the LA vicinity will peak tonight into Tuesday morning. While around San Diego, they will be strong today, but will peak Tuesday morning and afternoon. So, and obviously, as we've seen, the fires have been devastating down there, and like we saw at the last event, it doesn't really take very much at all to start off a huge new fire. So let's take a look at some of these wind forecasts. So this is the high-resolution rapid refresh model, and if we just play this out through Tuesday there, you can see where these strongest winds are expected. You got strong winds there around Oxnard and Ventura there, towards some of the Channel Islands offshore, gusts 40 to 50 miles per hour. But take a look at where some of these strongest winds are going to be. These mountains to the east of San Diego, and then some of the San Gabriel Mountains to the north of Los Angeles, and some of the mountains between the San Gabriels and these ranges to the east of San Diego that go all the way into northern parts of Baja California. There's going to be some pretty strong winds there as well. The mountains are going to be seeing gusts up to 100 miles an hour, like that forecast said. So, this is just, it's not a good situation. The winds overall are likely going to be lesser than the previous event. We can compare that to the NAM model here, and you can see we have consensus on these strong winds to the east of San Diego in the mountains there, strong winds in parts of the San Gabriel Mountains, and then the NAM shows a much stronger area of winds there around Oxnard, Camarillo, Ventura there, and gusts up to 60 miles per hour there on the NAM model, and that does peak late tonight. So let's take a look at what's going on down in this area currently. So we can set this to show wind gusts. So let's take a look at that Here we go. We can get as many stations as possible reading on here. Actually, this option should be a little bit better so we don't crash out the system there. You can see some of the hills there, Santa Susana Mountains north of Simi Valley there, gusting up to 40 miles per hour. You can see Oxnard up to 26 miles per hour so far, peak of 40 miles an hour there today. And you can see this is not really what you want to see. The areas around Malibu here, where some areas have been very much impacted by the Palisades fire, are gusting up to 40 miles per hour. That is not something you want to see. And then as we go further south here over the Santa Ana Mountains, you can see, and like Chino Hills, Pomona, some of those areas northeast of Anaheim there, gusting over 50 miles per hour right now in the Chino Hills. You can see some of these peak gusts up to 60 miles per hour in those areas so far. But the thing that makes these winds quite bad is when you take a look at relative humidity. So look at this. This is just really not something you want to see. Relative humidity across most of the LA metro is in the 5 to 15% range. That is, anything will burn in conditions that are that dry. It's just not a good situation. And this continues. If we zoom out, you can see that across the entirety of Southern California, you have these extremely dry relative humidity values. Look at that, 15% there at San Diego International Airport. Some places getting as low as 8% there. It's really just not a good situation. If we continue looking at some of our wind gusts and we go a little bit further south towards San Diego, you can see some of those winds on the Laguna Mountains there are starting to increase. You can see gusts up to 60 miles an hour on some of the higher peaks there, and gusts there along Interstate 8 getting up to about 40 miles per hour so far. Likely those will increase as well over the next few hours and into tomorrow for some of these southern areas near the Mexican border. But you can see how these winds don't really get down into San Diego all that much. And when we look back at the forecast, you can see that that is the case. San Diego is right here, and we can actually zoom. Let's see if we can zoom into San Diego a little bit more there. Looks like we can only zoom into Los Angeles. So let's do the LA zoom there, and you can see San Diego's right down here, only gets to about 30 miles per hour. But here you also have this wind-shattered area over parts of downtown LA. So if you're looking for a little bit of good news with this wind setup in California, this is probably it. So the Palisades fire is burning right about here. The neighborhoods that were destroyed are right around here, and they should only gust to about 30 miles per hour, which is very good news. This event is going to favor the more typical Santa Ana wind locations, such as Thousand Oaks and Oxnard, some of the mountaintops, and then some areas here outside San Bernardino. Not the widespread strong winds we saw in the previous event. Although you are going to have some places around Anaheim there that will be gusting up to 40 miles per hour. You can see Ontario there gusting up to 50 miles per hour. And this is that kind of scenario that started the Eaton fire near Altadena and Pasadena, which is right over here, could see gusts up to 35 miles per hour or higher. However, the strongest winds around LA will be confined to the very top peaks of the San Gabriel Mountains, where those gusts will reach 70 to 90 miles per hour. You can see the stronger winds on parts of Interstate 8 there, outside of San Diego, east of San Diego there, where gusts could be reaching 90 miles per hour. So that's pretty significant. I would not be traveling through there, especially if you drive something like a semi-truck. That would be a very bad situation driving in those areas where you got winds over 70 miles per hour. So that is the heads up there for California. You can see how winds are increasing so far. We'll check back on this periodically during the live stream just to see how things are progressing. You can see some of the strongest winds so far are between San Bernardino and Palm Springs there, with some gusts near 60 miles per hour. I don't know if that station reading 80 miles per hour is correct. I would treat that with some caution. But you can see gusts 45 to 60 miles per hour here outside of San Bernardino and Palm Springs there along I-10. And then you can see another area of strong winds across parts of the Santa Ana Mountains there, and then the San Gabriel Mountains. As usual, getting some pretty strong gusts up in there north of San Fernando. They're gusting up to 45 miles per hour. But one good thing to see here is if we zoom in toward Altadena and Pasadena, not gusting that much in the lowlands there. We are unfortunately gusting up to 40 miles per hour north of Altadena there, with some gusts over 60 miles an hour in that area today. So let's change what we're looking at here and take a look at the peak gusts that we've seen all day. And it does paint a little bit of a different picture. You can see that some of these areas north of Los Angeles have already peaked in their winds and are seeing lesser winds right now. So you can see a peak gust of 88 miles an hour there at nearly 5,000 feet in the San Gabriel Mountains. And you can see gusts of 50 to 55 miles per hour around the I-5, I-210 split, and some gusts 40 plus miles an hour over to the east or to the west here over the Santa Susana Mountains and to the San Fernando Valley. As we move south towards San Diego, they're looking at peak winds. You can see that the forecast would be showing that these winds wouldn't really be increasing yet, and this is not really wanting to. There we go, we get it to load now. You can see gusts 40 to 50 miles per hour, but really not seeing some of those strong winds that we've seen up closer toward Los Angeles just yet. That will likely be increasing over the next few hours there. So we pretty much got that covered. You can see if we look at the Watch Duty app, not really any significant fires going on right now, especially we don't have any new ones that have started today that have been quite bad. You can see the locations of the Palisades fire and the Eaton fire. If we take a look here at the Palisades fire, we're going to have to turn off the camera layer so we can click on it. There we go. So you can see, take a look at the Palisades fire, 61% contained. That is great news to hear. And you can see here the Eaton fire, 87% contained. Also very good news. And you can see we did have a couple of new fires going on today. 30 minutes ago, it looks like the Chambers fire started in Riverside County with one Type 3 engine strike team, 5 engines, and 1 water tender requested. There is a photo of that fire. Does not look to be threatening. See, fast-moving vegetation fire about an hour ago. So this could be a situation that increases somewhat quickly. This area will be seeing some strong winds. Let's see. It does look to be near some neighborhoods, but thankfully the winds are likely going to be blowing toward this lake and not toward these homes. So that is something good to see. So to everyone watching in the chat here, just want to say if you have any weather questions about Western Washington, about California, feel free to ask those. I would love to answer as many as I can over about the next hour here. We have some cold temperatures coming up for the next few days across Western Washington. Interesting extended forecast, possibly. We can take a look at that as well. We have some extended outlooks we can take a look at. And, of course, we can keep looking at some of these conditions going on across California. Let's take a look here at the Climate Prediction Center's 6 to 10 day outlooks here. You can see temperature and precipitation outlooks. These are usually a somewhat good indicator of what's going to happen over the next few days to couple weeks. So let's see, we do have a question in the chat here. Roland says, when is the next La Nina update? Well, we can look at that right here. So this is the Climate Prediction Center. They are the ones who forecast La Nina. And you can see their update here on January 9th, so a couple of weeks ago now, talks about the fact that we are in a La Nina advisory. La Nina conditions are present and expected to persist through February to April 2025 with a 59% chance, with a 60% chance transitioning to neutral this spring. So let's take a look on this page at the La Nina outlook here. It's going to be under this. We're going to go down to look at the weekly evaluation. So this is a really good thing to look at if you want some great information on La Nina and how it works. This is put out every week from the National Weather Service Climate Prediction Center. So this is a good graphic to look at right here. You can see this is the Nino 3.4 region is part of the Central Pacific Ocean, and this is where we get our measurements for determining El Nino and La Nina. You can see how our strong El Nino weakened quickly from last winter to this summer, and then we transitioned to a very weak La Nina that we are in currently. And you can see the forecast for this. We get the forecast down here, and there is our probability forecast. You can see how the probability of La Nina decreases as we go into the spring. The probability of neutral conditions increases for the spring, and then that La Nina starts to tick back up a little bit as we go into the summer. You can see the general consensus here keeps us very close to neutral, which there's a mixed signal for what that can mean for the Pacific Northwest. Usually we tend to be a little bit cooler and wetter than normal in neutral conditions. Nothing like La Nina, but also not as dry as El Nino. However, we are in a very dry period right now. Mo says, please tell me when we'll see a little snow in the Seattle area before next winter. I'm with you there, Mo. I would like to see some snow as well. And it's been quite a while since we've had a decent snow event across Western Washington. One thing we can take a look at here is if we look at the extended European model and just play it all the way out over the next 2 weeks, you can see that we start to get a little bit more active by the time we get into the 1st of February. And I think this was referenced in the chat earlier that around the 1st of February, some forecasts were maybe picking up on some lowland snow. Not something that is even remotely close to us talking about yet, but you can see the potential is I guess you could say it's there. Something else we can look at here is the European model weeklies, and this basically helps us to see different anomalies in what's going on across the forecast. So you can see over the next, this is the 32-day snow average, and you can see where it kind of picks up on there being some more snow. And so here, a good way to look at this is the anomalies in the precipitation here. So this is, we can zoom this in to the Pacific Northwest, and this is basically the European model's take on what the anomaly in precipitation is going to be over the next month plus. And you can see its forecast for February shows us being a little bit drier before we start to get wetter than normal into the middle of February, into March, and then kind of a mixed signal after March there. You can see our 7-day anomaly extremely dry for at least the next week, but likely longer. And then you can see that continues all the way until mid-February, when we start to get a bit of a change there and get wetter than normal into February, and then maybe some drier periods after that. So these outlooks admittedly are kind of something you take with a grain of salt. They are sometimes right and sometimes they flip-flop really quickly, but it does help to give you an overall pattern kind of what's going on. And what this outlook is showing is that basically there is a likelihood that sometime over the next month or so we will start to get back to some wetter conditions, more active conditions. I guess you'd say that would be more typical for January. But right now, look at this. I mean, just some pretty dry conditions overall. And something else we can look at here, and I believe I have this in here, we can look at recent climate anomaly maps. And this is something that's pretty interesting to look at. If we go to the Washington page here, we can look at our percent of average precipitation over the last 30 days here for Western Washington. And take a look at this. This is a really interesting outlook to look at here. So basically, this is the percent of average precipitation from late last December to right about now. And you can see, based on this legend down here, Western Washington is only getting around 25 to 90% of average precipitation, while Eastern Washington has been able to get a large proportion of their average precipitation, nearly 200% of average. But do keep in mind they don't get very much rain around this time of year anyway, so very small amounts of rain can really play with this outlook here. But this just kind of paints the picture that it has been much drier than normal across western Washington over the last while here. Kim asks, how is the snowpack depth? We do have a snowpack page we can look at here as well. I don't know if I have it bookmarked. The page has changed links many times. Here we go. Here's our snowpack map. So here is the snowpack. We'll go to the interactive map here and see if this works. I have to say I don't use this map all that much. We're going to just figure it out as we go. So here we're looking at snow water equivalent data. Let's take a look at basin conditions. This is what we want. Let's let this thing figure it out. There we go. All right, this is what you guys are used to seeing. So this is the snowpack map. And so basically what we're seeing here, this is Washington right here, and then you have Oregon. You can see Portland is right there on my clicker. And this is not a great map for the area. It's not terrible. You can see the Cascades, kind of the central Cascades northward, have about 80 to 90% of average snowfall there, and then the Cascades of southern Washington and parts of Oregon have 100 to 150%. So the Oregon Cascades are doing a bit better than the Washington Cascades there. You can see the Washington Cascades really at 80 to 90% of average precipitation, or average snowpack, sorry. Not great, but not terrible. So we can look here also at reservoir storage, and this just kind of tells you how things are going overall. We can take a look here at the City of Seattle's reservoir storage for the water year 2025, and you can see it is, here's our water year storage. The average is this blue line here. The dotted line is the previous year. You can see we are right in line there with 2024, which did end up falling much below our average, but we didn't have any water issues. So this just goes to show you that we can be a little bit below average here and things can be okay. We can also take a look at this in the Yakima River Reservoir, and this is a good indicator of things for irrigation. Irrigation gets impacted by this a lot. You can see we are trailing a lot below average, I think, than we'd want to see there. That dotted line, the red dotted line on the top, is the average. That green dotted line in the green dash line there in the middle is previous year, and then the blue line there is this year. And you can see we are much below, I think, where we'd want to be, but there's still time to change this. You know, you can get some big rain going in April and May, and you can get that back up toward average. So we'll have to see over the next few months if we can get some of that pattern change. And talking about that pattern change and what we could see over the next couple months, let's take a look at these outlooks again. So this is the 3-month outlook, and this was issued just a few days ago here on January 16th, basically showing the potentials for February, March, and April of this year. And you can see it shows us having below average temperatures across western Washington, but above average precipitation for most of the Northwest. So that La Nina influence is still there. We're just not seeing it right now, as we have very consistent ridging across the area, that high pressure that is just bringing a ton of nice sunny days, cold nights, and it's just keeping all of the precipitation away. So we can see that here if we take a look at our sea level pressure forecast. Let's go to the extended run here, and we're just going to play this out over the next few days. So you can see if you have a barometer at your house and you start getting some of these values, 1030 millibars or higher, up toward 1040, that's starting to really like peg that scale of the barometer. It's going about as far as it can, and that is kind of interesting to watch. I really enjoy watching my barometer in my room move back and forth depending on what kind of systems we're having come through. So you can see as we go through Monday into Tuesday there that our next ridge starts to build off the coast and then starts to get even larger and then center itself over western Washington. Take a look here as we go into Wednesday. Western Washington is likely going to be having pressure over 1,040 millibars, which is very significant. That would be the highest I have observed over the past about 7 years here that I have been observing weather here in Federal Way. This would be getting very close to my record. And for some people who can be impacted by differences in pressure, that does cause you to feel a little bit different at times. And you'll notice this high pressure over parts of this week. This really high pressure continues through Thursday, and then we'll start to see that diminish a little bit as we go into Friday, but we're still being influenced by ridging quite a bit before we may start to get out of that by the time we get to about a week from now. If we take a look at this from an anomaly perspective, you can see how basically the redder and the darker this map gets, the more away from average the pressure is. So you can see as we go through the next few days there, it's pretty far above average. So yeah, let me take a look here at the chat, see what's going on. Mo says sad trombones. Yeah, I feel the same. Roland says, do you know we are in an interglacial warming period in the middle of the Quaternary Ice Age? I haven't really dug into that type of science that much. I've studied it briefly in a couple of different classes, but that's something maybe I can look into more, some of those like historic climate eras, some really interesting things to look at, some really cool science to dig into regarding glacial periods, ice ages. There's a lot of physical evidence of that kind of stuff you can go see in Eastern Washington, so that's pretty cool. Let's take a look again at our temperatures across Western Washington. And if you guys want, we can take a look here at minimum temperatures today. I'm sure most of you noticed that it was quite chilly across the region, and I talked about it a bit in this morning's video, but you got some places on the coast here that were dropping into the upper 20s. That's kind of significant for these regions. You can see the Long Beach Peninsula down there drop to the upper 20s, but take a look at some of these pretty cold areas inland here. The I-5 corridor there from Longview and Portland all the way up through Centralia and Olympia and up toward Tacoma had a lot of lows in the upper teens to low 20s. You can see 18 there around Centralia and Chehalis, 21 down in Longview, 19 at the Olympia Airport, and on base at JBLM we had some lows down into the upper teens to low 20s. And then as we go up into the metro area, you can see you have some lows in the mid-20s there. Even around downtown Seattle, which is going to be the warmest spot, you had some lows in the very low 30s there. 25 it looks like they're on Mercer Island, 28 around Bellevue, and then take a look at some of the Snoqualmie Valley up near Monroe. You got lows in the low 20s. Arlington there you can see down to 18 degrees, and even somewhere like Whidbey Naval Air Station, pretty close to the water, and that dropped to 25. So this is something that is going to be likely again tomorrow morning. You can see as we go to Tuesday morning there on the National Blend of Models, this same area is going to be the coldest there from about Centralia up through Tacoma, lows in the low to mid 20s, and then you can see around parts of the outlying areas of the Puget Sound lowlands, there lows in the mid-20s, and then the upper 20s to very low 30s around Seattle. If you're in some of these mountain towns like Leavenworth, you're down in the mid-teens. Same there at Snoqualmie Pass. So, and even on the coast, you're down near freezing again tonight. And like I said earlier, this is just kind of what's going to continue over the next few days. Take a look at the chat here. Mo says, weird because my folks in the Tri-Cities feel like it's been a wet fall and winter. And we did actually see that in the outlook we looked at just previously, that it has been wetter over in Eastern Washington, but that isn't necessarily saying a ton because they don't get very much rain to begin with. So when you do get a little bit more rain, it really does play with your averages quite a bit. However, it's been kind of an odd winter season in parts of Western Washington and really the whole state, because you have our strongest and most impactful event was that bomb cyclone that was not our traditional southerly winds. It was out of the east, out of the gaps. And we've had a few big storms since then in December, but since the year turned, it's really been quite calm. And like my weather station here in Federal Way barely has over an inch of rain for January so far, and we're 2/3 of the way through. And it's just kind of an interesting scenario that This is not what we typically see, especially in a La Nina winter. But that's not saying much at this point. Winter still has a while to go. The definition of meteorological winter, which is what a lot of us weather folks use, goes from December 1st to March 1st. So we still have a while to go in terms of what we consider meteorological winter. So let me take a look here we'll go back down to California and take a look at some of our current wind readings here. Let's plot those. There you go. You can see still getting windy across some of the mountains there. But again, I think the thing we have to be most concerned about is that relative humidity. And just look at these values. I mean, you got San Bernardino there, 8%. You got some of the areas around Ontario, Pomona, 6%. 8% there near Anaheim. You got downtown LA around 13% humidity. And even there by the coast near Santa Monica, LAX, only humidity up to about 28%. That's still quite dry. You could still easily have very fast moving fires with humidity at those levels. Looking down towards San Diego here, you can see even right by the ocean there in San Diego, you got humidity around 21% at the international airport there. And as you go up into the mountains, that humidity in the 10 to 15% range. So it is really just quite dry out there, and that's not going to bode well for any fires that do start. And something we can take a look at here is that there are some warnings in effect for this. So as we let the warnings load here, let me let those load here for just a second. There we go. So if we pick a location, let's pick some of these mountains outside San Diego. Say you were traveling on Interstate 8 tonight and you wanted to see what was going on. You can see we got 3 different things in effect. We have a red flag warning in effect until 10 p.m. tomorrow for strong gusty winds and low relative humidity for all mountains and the San Diego County valleys. We have a fire weather watch in effect for the next 3 days. Then we have a high wind warning in effect from 4 a.m. Tuesday to 10 p.m. Tuesday, or to 8 p.m. Tuesday. So that shows you when the strongest winds are expected for the mountains around San Diego, from early tomorrow morning through 8 p.m. Tuesday. So if we click on this warning, you can see what's going on. It says northeast and east winds of 25 to 35 miles per hour with gusts up to 60 miles per hour possible. Isolated gusts in excess of 80 miles per hour on favored coastal slopes of the San Diego County mountains Monday night into Tuesday morning. And if we take a look at some other locations here, take a look at the regions impacted by the Palisades fire. There we have a red flag warning in effect around that fire, and we can click on this here. You can see that it says very strong Santa Ana winds are developing today and peaking this afternoon into Tuesday morning. Humidities will drastically lower into the single digits, and along with extremely dry fuels, this will create extremely critical fire weather conditions and rapid fire spread with any fires. With northeast winds of 25 to 35 miles per hour with gusts up to 45 to 55 miles per hour from Monday to Tuesday afternoon. And that does include the Palisades fire, unfortunately, and we saw just how fast some of those winds can increase. And this is interesting. You might have noticed the green here over Santa Catalina Island. There's a high surf warning there, and that will be because of some of the wind-induced waves blowing off the California coast toward the harbors on Santa Catalina and Santa Barbara Islands. You can see there that you will have waves of 5 to 8 feet along east-facing shores. That's pretty significant, especially when you consider there's not a huge amount of distance between the mainland and the coasts of the islands there. So that's a pretty significant wave size for not a very far distance for that to be kind of picked up and generated. So that's pretty interesting to see as well. There's just a lot going on here in Southern California that is going to potentially cause a lot more problems with these winds, but if we're lucky, we'll get through it without any significant fires. Kim says Western Whatcom County was warm and wet October through December. That is true. Things have really calmed down a lot since October and December. October through December. We have had just a really calm start to 2025 weather-wise. We'll see if that changes at some point, but it really has just been pretty calm so far. I think the things we're seeing in the extended pattern does suggest that it will likely change. I mean, if we look at our 3-month outlook there, that's a pretty decent signal that we get in some La Nina years that shows a potential for above average precipitation and below average temperatures. And again, it's important to kind of point out that just because it shows below average on the temperature outlook doesn't mean that, it's going to be below freezing, it's going to be snowing, it's going to be blizzard conditions in the mountains, anything like that. That's not what these outlooks mean. It's showing that there's basically a 50% chance of below average temperatures. Below average could mean that if your average is, say, 40 degrees, you have a high of 37 or something like that. That's what these outlooks mean. They're not saying if there's below average, it's going to be below freezing and all that. But what we really want to hope for at this point is that we get some more storms in here and start building up that snowpack. Mountain snow is the thing we need most. Lowland snow, it's possible, but it's far too uncertain to say if that's even going to happen or not. The best thing for us would be to get that snowpack built up over the next few weeks and months. And if we take a look here as well at the 1-month outlook for February, this was issued a couple days ago as well on January 16th. You can see below average temperatures and above average precipitation for the Pacific Northwest. And again, doesn't mean it's going to be big lowland snow or anything like that, but even just building that snowpack and getting some more rain in here for the lowlands, that would all be nice stuff to see. So yeah, I think that is about all we've got going on tonight, folks. We've got the wind down in California. We've got our chilly temperatures here across western Washington. We can look at that one more time before I sign off here. You can see you got temperatures dropping into the upper 20s to low 30s already. We can compare that to 24 hours ago, and you can see some areas are 2 to 5 degrees colder. Some areas across the lowlands are a little bit warmer. The biggest thing to watch when we're looking at the temperatures tonight are going to be these high clouds. You can see them moving across the area right now. They're likely going to get through before the coldest time of the morning, which is right before sunrise. So we will likely have lows again in the mid to upper 20s across most of the region. Areas near the water, near the coast, likely in the low 30s. Outlying areas could get down to the low 20s, maybe a few places in the upper teens. So it's an interesting thing to watch. It's kind of fun when you get these really nice sunny days and you get the frost in the morning. It looks pretty cool, and it's nice that we got the sun shining through all of our windows instead of that socked in fog that we had the last few days of last week. So, as always, thank you all so much for watching. Thank you for subscribing and liking this stream. Thank you for tuning into Western Washington Weather. I will be sure to do more live streams if we have more active weather coming up here, down in California, anywhere along the Pacific Northwest coast that I can talk about. Would be fun to do these streams. So thank you all very much for watching. I hope you all have a great week, and I will see you in my daily videos.